This is Steve Shoney. I'm the city manager for the city of Upper Arlington, and that was our good friend of the show, Colin Gow, with his song Podcast, our officially licensed theme song. I'm here with my co-host, Sidekick.
Darren Schulman, I'm the city attorney.
And we're starting off this episode with a conversation about one of the great organizations in our community, one of the organizations that does some of the things that are most quintessentially Upper Arlington, the Upper Arlington Community Foundation. And we're
Civic Association.
Oh, God, it's way too early. So for our regular listeners, as you might have figured out, Darren and I tend to be a little bit of creatures of habit.
You're gonna go inside baseball.
I'm going to go inside baseball. Darren was late. I was kind of flustered. I'm sitting in the wrong chair. And
I took his chair.
Nichole Montgomery took my chair.
And I literally said she was going to move. And I said, it's okay, because if Steve screws up, which he never does, he can blame it on the chair. And literally 2 seconds into the episode, you screwed up.
I screwed up. See, it was, and I just meant to do that. It was part of the joke. That's what I was setting up.
It's all part of the plan.
I set that up purposely. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing excellent, and you?
Good. On our podcast, on the main, we talked earlier about how we have two different segments, which you would know if you'd listened to some of these.
Listen, all my time is spent volunteering for the events for UA.
I mean, you can put headphones on while you're volunteering and listen.
I have 2 kids and a full-time job.
Kids would not. That's not the target audience. They would be bored.
So typically, we at the beginning of every one of our kind of second segment interviews, we do something that we call Start Bench Cut, which is I'm going to give you 3 things you have to say. If this was a team, which one would you have in your starting lineup? Which one would you have on the bench, and which one would you cut?
Okay.
The Bear, the Gold Jackets, or the Golf Carts?
Ooh, I know that we would probably cut the Gold Jackets. They are not a fan, or people are not a huge fan, especially during the 4th of July with a big wool gold coat and it's 90 degrees outside. I know it's quintessential. That's how you identify us in the community, but boy, they're really uncomfortable. Starting lineup would definitely be the Bear. And then, what was the third? Sorry.
It was the Golf Carts.
Oh, Golf Carts.
Yeah.
Would be
Benched.
On the bench.
It's nice to have them. They're there if you need them, but they're not.
That's a
yeah.
Well done, Darren. That's the appropriate place for the Golf Carts.
I would think
they're great. We love them. It's a nice perk, of, it's kind of like that, hey, you first year, it was hot, you spun the Bear in the parade, you get to the end, and wow, guess what? You put on that hard work, and the next year we're going to give you the gift of the golf cart since, you put in that hard work through the first year. So it's kind of like a second year, pat on the back, you did it, good job. But we can't ever you can't bench the Bear.
No, you can't bench the Bear.
That's just...
I'm concerned about these Gold Jackets. Is there another material we can get so people don't have heat stroke or something?
Can you get them in linen?
Yeah.
Well,
actually, they might be kind of cool.
That might look kind of wrinkly, considering we move around a lot. But hey, I mean, we could. We have a lot of other items too. I mean, jackets that are for winter. We have polos. We have hats. There's just other ways you can identify us. The gold coat doesn't.
Would you be willing to wear real gold? It'll be heavier.
Oh yeah, like Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah,
came in,
would you be willing to do
knitted
that for the sake of recognition?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, anything for the community.
Just some gold thread through it to just kind of give it a little sheen.
Yeah. Just give us a little flair. Yeah.
Because that wouldn't make us look elitist at all.
We got real gold.
That's not in the budget.
We got real gold in our jacket. That's how much money we have.
So, for those who don't know, the Civic Association is the group that actually runs the fireworks, that runs the parade, runs Golden Bear Scare.
Yes.
Runs Winterfest.
Or Christmas in the Park.
Christmas in the Park.
The 5 a.m. sign-up one.
Yep.
Wait, what?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about it because I don't get up that early. So.
It's a race. You had to get up, be right there.
So if you want Parker to see Santa, you're going to have to get up pretty early.
Yeah.
For reals?
For reals.
For reals.
It's that much of a hot ticket, huh?
Oh, yeah, it is. And you have to pay your dues. You have to be a member.
Okay. I mean, that's okay. It's the 5 a.m. part. Can you pay someone else to get in line for you? Is that allowed?
I mean, that's on you. Yeah, sure.
It could be a business.
You could set up a little. You could not.
No, but
As I'm telling our chief ethics
enterprising.
officer, that you cannot set up a business that's built around getting people access to the city. Just to be clear, this is another thing that has happened, not frequently, more than once, where I have to tell the city attorney.
He gives me the legal advice on the show. I give it to him off the show. Yeah.
So let's back up for a minute because we started trying to be silly. What is the UA Civic Association?
So, over the years, the Civic Association started, way back at the first founding of, when UA actually kind of became a community. And at first, it was started as a way to welcome people who were new to moving into the area. They would do dances and galas and hops, whatever you want to call them, to kind of welcome people into community so they could all get to know one another and function. We also, I think, the Civic Association was the first founder of the sewage system.
Wait, what?
Mark Gable is on our board of trustees, and he also serves in the Historical Society. He is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to facts about the Civic Association. I highly encourage you put him on this podcast because he's great. So that was the kind of thing. So we started founding the community even from a financial standpoint. A lot of the water and the sewage systems were the money was raised by the Civic Association to get UA up and going as a fully functional community. So obviously we've evolved since then. Now we put on, a lot more fun things and raise money for, fun activities for families, and children here in the community. We are 100% funded by donations. So when you go in and you pay your membership, that's what helps fund us being able to put on these events, including 4th of July. Everything we do is 100% funded by the community. So we do have excellent partners like the city, where we are lucky enough to utilize, the parks and rec and, some of that. But as far as everything else, that's kind of how we function, and everything we do revolves around the community. And, we do have our directors. It's a 2-year term. You serve 2 years, you get placed in your event, and we run. What is it? I think we're sitting at 36 directors this year. We upped it a little bit just because events have a little more uplift, and us 36 we're it. That's how we put on these events. And we do have some great support from our alumni that do come back to some of the bigger events for the uplift. But
I don't think people realize how hard it is to put on something huge like a 4th of July fireworks. It's not just light off some sparklers and talk to someone at the city or something.
No, absolutely not. And thank goodness we have our 4th of July directors. I think they serve, it's a little bit longer of a term. They're already starting to plan for next year's fireworks. So that's a full year of planning, obviously, with contracting and working with the city and making sure that we mind all our P's and Q's and hold a great event for the community that kind of addresses everybody.
Well, and I think it's something that I think people are confused about sometimes. The city, the only thing that we spend money on, taxpayer dollars on, for the 4th of July is the staffing.
Yep, police. You guys help us with that police presence. And, it is nice. We get to use Northam Park, and, we are utilizing that. So it is a true partnership, and we're really thankful for that. There's no way we'd be able to do that without that type of partnership. But the uplift and having people really understand to no fault of the city, but the city does not financially execute or plan the fireworks. It is all of us, just as community volunteers that pull that off.
Yep.
Well, thank you, because a lot of places the city does have to figure that out and do fundraising and things like that. So it's a huge service that you provide the residents and the city.
Yeah, absolutely. And we love it. It's so much fun. There's nothing like riding down the parade and, seeing everybody kind of yelling, spin the bear and seeing, just the faces of the kids and really enjoying that day. It is one of the most quintessential community events I think I've ever attended. So I think we're really lucky to still have that.
And our own master of the big board here, Mr. Hedge, is, are you one of the directors? Or just,
Mm-hmm.
What is your assignment, Mr. Hedge?
Corporate sponsorship.
Oh,
corporate sponsorship. That sounds so fascinating. Much better than fireworks.
So if any of our 10 listeners own a business and want to want to sponsor something with the Civic Association, send something to Brian's personal email, not his work email.
Yeah. You could send it to the president's email and I'll pass it along too. So yeah, oddly enough, that's probably one of our most important roles as director. Again, like we couldn't be able to pull this off without sponsors and with membership. So very important.
So you guys have your kind of one of the things that's I would imagine is both great and challenging about being the president of the UA Civic Association is it is a group that is steeped in tradition. Mm-hmm. Talk about kind of how you want to how the organization's thinking about evolving itself and evolving the kinds of things that you guys do.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I will say, a lot of my presidency this year has been centered around how are we evolving and how are we making sure that we are staying true to what our community wants and representing our community. Part of that is inclusion. It's looking at, how do we really broaden out our membership? How do we make sure people understand who we are and what we truly do so that way we genuinely represent our community in the most appropriate way. And obviously that's a difficult thing to do. I think about in this day and age, there's a lot of different modalities for communication and what people want and sharing of opinions. And because we have been so steeped in tradition, we have to take into consideration, okay, how do we keep true to who we are and those traditions that are so important that, kind of define, if you will, air quotes, the UACA, but also be more inclusive of, the changes that we're seeing in our community. And I think that out of COVID, we've seen an awful lot of, uptick in interest in being involved in community events. I mean, we were kind of stagnant there for a while. Now people are kind of coming out and getting back out and wanting to be more involved in community. And so we've really had to address and listen to the voices of the people that live here in UA. And as president, I've done my best to be their voice, to go back and say, hey guys, how can we make this more inclusive? How can we make sure that we are truly representing the constituents of Upper Arlington? And can we change everything all at once in 1 year? Absolutely not. There's just too much in it. But will we listen and will we try to, make sure we are taking steps every year to do better? Absolutely. And that's really what my goal has been as president, this year is how do we make sure that we are realigning ourselves to truly be what our mission states us to be. And that's an organization that serves our community.
And, I got to imagine that's really hard because you're all volunteer. Mm-hmm. You run very complicated events and events that are loved. And I've seen the binders that each of your directors have about how to pull off each event. And we've had some things where we, with North and with all the construction, it's like, okay, we have to move this. And for a volunteer who's got a day job and kids and parents and all this kind of stuff, it's like, well, wait a minute. I got enough trouble just implementing the book. Now you're telling me I actually got to move everything around. I got to imagine that for a group of volunteers, it's really hard to think strategically and not just tactically. Is that one of the things that you guys kind of are struggling through?
Yeah, and I would say, I think that it's nice that the way that we're structured with serving a 2-year term as a director, and each director is assigned an event. So depending on, you have Christmas in the Park is obviously going to be a little more of an uplift. So we have 4 directors that serve on that one. And then, 4th of July is more than that. But the way that we serve allows us, I think, to be strategic while still, giving our time to do the tactical things that we need to do. So the first years learn from their second years. The second year directors are there to be mentors to those first years, to teach them the ins and outs. But also what I've really encouraged this year specifically is, hey guys, let's reevaluate. Listen to people that are coming in and are new, and let's hear those new ideas and let's implement them where we can without, a huge change. But I also think, again, another thing that COVID did for us was making us have to really learn how to think on the fly and pivot. I know, it's like the Friends thing, pivot. That was kind of our theme last year. We did a lot of pivoting, and I think that when you really care about an organization and what what we're doing and how it impacts the community, you're willing to kind of give that little more percentage to do what you need to do to get it to be what it needs to be. So I think our structure really aligns well for us to be able to be strategic and tactical at the same time. But it is still a lot of work.
If you're trying to reposition yourself into some, 22nd century organization, you could look to the past and go back to the sewers. And there's no other civic associations that are doing that.
Absolutely.
Cutting edge, go back to your roots, but look towards the future. Everyone loves sewers.
And sewers are going to be the thing of the future, because with more serious rain events, all that sort of stuff. Trust me, we are happy to send every water and basement call over to you as the Civic Association president.
You'll be the most popular people in the city.
Well, we do send out, in the water bill, we do send out, hey, you want to donate?
Yeah.
That goes out.
You want to donate to our new sewer initiative? What?
No.
So if people did want to get involved with the Civic Association, what's the best way for folks to learn more, to figure out how to get involved and really dive into giving back to this community a little bit?
Well, first and foremost, we live in a world of social media, so go on to our Instagram, Facebook. We're there. We have all of that set up. Follow us. Attend our events. And while you're attending, walk up to a director and say, hey, I'd really love to learn more, and set up a time to meet with either myself or one of the officers. And we love sitting down and talking with people about who we are and what we do. We have a website you can go on. We're actually getting ready to kick off its recruitment season. We will be having our recruiting event in November. So applications are open now. Anybody can go on to the uaca.org website and fill out an application to become a director. And then my sidekick, Jordan Bronstein, which is the VP this year, which will be stepping into my shoes next year, is currently setting up times to meet with people who are interested in learning more and becoming a director.
Wait, so you have an application process, and yet Hedge got through that somehow?
I know. I mean, I had to pull some strings.
So there's hope for everybody who's interested.
Everybody.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your morning this morning and coming on with us, and for giving so much of your time and talent over the last couple of years in this role, and I know you'll continue to stay involved too. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Podcast. Yeah, we're doing a podcast. Click the link, listen to our podcast. Yeah.
We're very excited today to have another great resident of Upper Arlington with us. He is the president and CEO of the Columbus Foundation, somebody who I've had the opportunity to work with on a number of things, primarily in one of my past lives, but still talk to him periodically on stuff around here. Doug Kridler. Doug, welcome.
Thank you. So you will be talking then about your past life as a riverboat gambler?
Tell me more, Steve.
It was there were days where it felt like being a riverboat gambler, and
I didn't know that was safe to go there. So
no,
this would be great. Maybe I'll interview
although the
you.
problem is my wife listens to this podcast, and she doesn't know about that part of my history.
Okay.
She's one of our 5 listeners. It's my wife, Darren's dad, and a couple of other people. But
the weekly guest, maybe,
for
their episode.
Yeah. About half the time they actually listen to their episode. So no, that's right. I did do a little bit of riverboat gambling with you, not true riverboat gambling,
No.
but
Was it the kind of riverboat that doesn't ever leave, like in Indiana, or were you like actually on one of those old Mark Twain wheeled ship things?
Yeah.
it was
That would date us.
That would date us, yeah. No, and occasionally it was Doug and I being slapped with really big problems, and people say, "Yeah, go figure this out," and we're like,
Yeah.
"All right,
You got to take risks and, have big visions.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the things that we do to start every interview is we do something called Start Bench Cut. So I've listened to podcasts. I listen to sports podcasts. And the concept is we're going to give you 3 things. And if this was a sports team, which one do you start? Which one do you bench? Which one do you cut? So we're going to give you 2. And I'm going to start you off with an easy one.
And then an even better one.
So you say
Actually, wait. Before you do that, I have no idea what you're talking about.
So basically, one of the 3 things is your keeper. You're keeping them with you. The second one is kind of in reserve, and the third one gone forever.
Like my pets, my kids, my
So
Yes.
that kind of thing. Yeah,
We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that to your pets and your kids, though. That's not
No,
fair.
not
We're
your pets
sporting
and
at
your-
least.
No, so
Start,
you said
bench, or cut?
Start, bench, or cut. You said you're a big Cleveland sports fan.
I am.
Guardians, Browns, Cavs.
So one is your favorite. One you kind of like they're around, and then one's like relocated and gone from Cleveland.
And you have to assign one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
the trick.
this is the trick.
We make it hard on purpose.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, it would be easier on a lot of people's mental health if the Browns were cut again.
Again, someone's made that decision before.
Yeah. So I guess that.
That might be the best cut answer we've ever had.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
That's pretty brilliant.
Hard to cut the Guardian or bench the Guardians when they're bringing us such a fun, youthful, beyond the odds kind of entertainment. But I guess I'd bench the Cavs, but I love them too. So young and full of spirit, well coached. So I guess if I'd
Guardians.
start the Guardians based on what they've accomplished and really how well they're managed too. It's really something.
So that was your warm up.
Okay.
now
So-
you know the concept.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Cincinnati. I'm one of the. I don't really have a lot of Schadenfreude in my heart.
Yeah.
Where I take pleasure in other people's
Yeah,
pain.
yeah.
But the Browns is one of those.
Yeah,
Places. So here's your other one, and this is about Cleveland number ones. So start, bench, cut. Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel, Tim Couch.
Number one quarterbacks.
Number one
one
draft
picked quarterbacks.
Number one draft pick quarterbacks for the Cleveland Browns.
So cut Johnny Manziel.
Okay.
Hard to argue with his performance as a human.
He was as strong off the field as he was on the field.
Yes, there you go.
And he's made so much of himself afterwards too. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
I would cut. I would bench Couch, and I would start Baker, even though that's not popular in Columbus because of his flag planting escapades. I mean, the kid relatively has a lot of heart, and he might be stubborn and maybe didn't do the Browns any favors last year playing when he was hurt. But I think you get a full effort from him, and he's sort of playing with a lot of guts and gumption.
All right.
yours was Couch, right? You were going to start.
I was
him?
going to start Couch just because I think he performed better. But I like your answer about Baker because I think he's got the potential.
He's got the heart of not, if not a champion. I would say. I mean, I don't think we've seen that. And a lot of people I know, they just say he's sort of petulant. But he lays it on the line when he's playing, and there's a lot to like about that.
And I think he's got the potential to be as good off the field as Manziel was.
Yeah.
Poor off the field.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I'll give you
Oh,
some
I
credit.
see how you twisted that around. I thought you were making like he is Manziel, but you were saying he's the opposite.
No,
of
he
Manziel.
could be as good a human being. So you're right now you're the CEO of the Columbus Foundation, president and CEO of the Columbus Foundation. But one of the things that you
Are we done with this segment?
We're not going to trick you anymore.
We're
Your
done.
misery is over.
So
now.
this is my transition out of this.
Oh, good, because I didn't want to cut or bench any donors or anything like that.
Now we're gonna go through your board members,
Okay.
of which we've already mentioned one, which is the fabulous Lisa Ingram. We talked about her before we got on. She actually came into the podcast with the best shoes that we've ever had anybody show up to the podcast, and she came in.
Oh, clearly.
No, she came in with her White Castle collaboration Pumas that she.
I
wowed
bet you
us
those looked great on radio.
with.
We were. This is not make for good radio. You're correct, but we were so flabbergasted by them that we literally spent 10 minutes like looking at them and talking about
Wow.
the shoe. And then we were
So there
looking
was
them up
just
on our
like
phone.
silence on podcast
Well, we were
for
like,
10 minutes?
We're like, I found it on my phone. There's another kind. It's blue. Like
We fill the air. Don't worry.
Oh,
We
okay,
find
all right,
things to
all
fill
right.
the air with.
All right.
So
Well, sorry to disappoint on my shoes. I will
what-
say they're
Yours
not
are the
on.
second best
They're
shoes.
not on Foundation brand or anything.
Oh no. We'll see.
You don't have a collaboration with like ASICS or something? Come
Yeah,
on.
right.
Before you got into doing your great work at the foundation, you were doing concert promotion. Am I remembering that right?
Yes,
And running Kappa and a couple other things.
yeah, and I toured with Bob Skaggs, toured with Journey, who was touring with the Stones. So I guess by association, I toured with the Stones, and presented over 1,000 concerts. So
Those are some like legit bands.
Yeah. That's better than when Colin came in and talked about touring with the Insane Clown Posse. So
You've reached a slightly higher level than the Insane Clown Posse. Although I guess we should give you the opportunity. Did you ever tour with them as well?
no, I got offered to tour with Kiss, but fortunately that fell. Now, not as a musician, but that fell through. But I was actually thankful for that because I don't think I could have endured that. But Colin is a truly distinctive, long-running attraction musically and civically. And so since you mentioned him, I just want to give him a shout out because he's a real asset in all sorts of ways and just such a good spirit. And the fact that he's at a place where you can encounter him frequently in his own shop, really helps spread that joy and interest in music, but also just through that life.
yeah.
Can you share any stories about your touring with these
I have.
bands?
I have literally so many stories. I mean, I don't know the average listener of this podcast, but
We don't either.
So it's my wife, it's your dad.
yeah. I mean, truly the full range from, Miles Davis to, Santana to opening the Nationwide Arena with Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, and Keith Urban with two nights. A lot of stories about the deals, and these are very tough deals to bring over the finish line. These entertainment deals with tough negotiators. But I also ran the concerts at Blossom, and so the heydays of from Talking Heads to Eric Clapton to Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor and Doobie Brothers, Tom Petty, and so on and so forth. So there are truly so many stories. I
Can you
don't
talk
know
about
how.
riders maybe? Like you hear these rumors
Yeah.
about like you had to have green M&Ms or something. Is there any
Yeah.
riders that you've come across that?
Oh, yeah.
Is that
but
real, first of all? I mean, is that a thing?
It
that
is
they do?
real. It's absolutely real. But in fairness, though the brown M&Ms and Van Halen and all that, but I'll give you an example of where it got absurd. But in fairness, before I do that, in defense of the artists, you're on the road and you are walking out on stage in front of 18,000 people, and you have to be on. And there is a certain reasonableness to consistency of what you can walk into that dressing room, and expect to be there in the quality and the consistency and so forth, because variables are not friendly to you when you have that many nerves. Even with seasoned performers, if they're still good, they still have nerves. And so, whether it be the Julie Andrews or the Yo-Yo Ma's or the you just name them. Almost everybody I presented at one time or another, it's kind of reasonable. But I did have a road manager, in essence, fired off a tour because there's a lot of anxiousness backstage over the course of the day. It builds, and during the load in, and then you're getting close to sound check, which means the artist is about to arrive, and all the people around the artist start to get nervous because if things aren't just right, or they know that the artist is going to walk in and be temperamental or whatever, and so they tend to take it out on others. And so I had this road manager come to me, and get in my face about the fact that John Cougar's, back then John Cougar, now John Cougar Mellencamp, the cheese that he had requested was cubed, not sliced.
Yes.
And the reason why I drew the line with him about that is we had sold, done the marketing, committed the funds, a lot of funds to bring him, and had executed everything that was required of us beautifully. And for him to get belligerent over something that could have been easily remedied, to a team, a partner that day that was delivering for them, was to not appreciate the quality, the effort, the sincerity, the integrity. And this is one of the things with artists too, is there is a lot of taking advantage of artists by promoters. And so when they encounter one that's not taking advantage of them, which we consistently did not do, that is, let me state that, so it's not a double negative.
Yeah.
We did not take advantage. We did it right at Kappa, and before that at Blossom. They don't exactly know what to do with that because they're so used to promoters, trying to cut edges, or, there are all sorts of things that happen at settlements where expenses get padded and all that. So to be a house that's taking care of business in a really solid, high integrity way and have episodes like that, I just said, this is just not tenable. And, sort of reached to his folks back in L.A. And next thing you know, a taxi pulled up in the backstage and he got in it and was sent home from the tour.
During the show, I guess, that fast?
Yeah.
Wow.
Would you say the level of temperamentality is proportional to the level of fame, or are there some kind of D-listers who are worse than, the Stones or something?
Yeah. So when I worked for Journey, I went over to this stadium outside Philadelphia where we were playing the next day, 2 sold-out nights. And, I was checking on Journey's part of the backstage village. You build this, and when you do stadium dates, you have to build all the infrastructure, the dressing rooms and everything backstage. So I was checking on that. How long is this podcast?
As long as
long enough.
Okay, all right, okay.
We've gone 20 minutes. We've gone an hour.
Oh, okay.
As long as we're getting some good stuff.
Yeah, all right. Well, you let me know. Or I guess I'll know whether you did on the final edited version.
Yeah.
Anyways, so then I went on stage because I wanted to just look out over the stadium. I always have enjoyed with shows or events the moments before the audience comes in, and then as the audience comes in. So the moments before the show, that anticipation, the work, from the union members on stage to the truck drivers that brought the trucks, you realize it's just this fantastic effort. All sorts of people, the ticket sellers, so on and so forth, that have come together for this moment, and anticipation of that moment, and the sound checks and so forth is really great. So anyways, this was the day before. I wanted to go out and just see the stadium empty and imagine it the next day full. And I hear some voices off to my shoulder, right shoulder, and I look, and it's Mick Jagger and Bill Graham. Now, I'm in the concert promotion and theater management business at that time, and 99.9% of the people go, "Oh my gosh, Mick Jagger." Well, I'm there oh my gosh, it's Bill Graham. And for those who don't know who Bill Graham was on this podcast, he really was the father of the modern concert stage show. So starting out at Fillmore West, developed a light show as part of concerts, and did all the early days, Jefferson Airplane and Santana and all those great San Francisco, Janis Joplin, all the Grateful Dead, great San Francisco oriented bands. And so, but my point is about you were asking about artists and D-listers and all that, is I really seldom in my 20 years in that business ever saw anybody so meticulously go over the details of the staging and so forth as I did, as I stepped back and watched Mick Jagger go through the entire next day with Graham, got on the lift that would take him over the audience, and you just didn't. I haven't seen a lot of that kind of attention to detail, and this is like well into his career, so he's not trying to make it at this point. He could be gliding. By the way, on my way out of the compound, when I arrived at the compound, there was nobody other than the security at the gate. On the way out, somehow fans, groupies always can figure out, even though bands try to go down through obscure exits in hotels and go out in obscure ways. Somehow the fans know where they are all the time. So as we're leaving, there were hundreds of fans at the security, and the limo, the security gate had to open just incrementally and inch out through the crowd. And so the crowd pressed up against the limousine, which had tinted glass, so they really couldn't see well into it, but they all pressed up against the window. I had kind of long hair or whatever, and all of a sudden a fan went, "It's Mick!" I was, "Oh my God, it's Mick!" And so I reached over to roll down the window to say, "No, it's not." And I thought, "No, that's all right. That's okay. That's all right. I'll ride through the crowd." Yeah. And wave and hello.
There's at least 10 people telling their kids about how they saw
Mick
Mick Jagger.
Yeah, it's you. So another just quick sound check story, and you'll have to cut me off because I have a lot of them, is when I was on tour with Bob Skaggs, he had assembled an unbelievable band. Boz has taken care of himself beautifully. He is still putting out albums, playing really well. But back then, we were selling out arenas and amphitheaters. But he had assembled a band of L.A., the Memphis Horns, and then a number of the top L.A. session studio musicians. And a couple of them, well, two of them were brothers, but a couple of them knew each other. They had talked about maybe someday forming a band, but I didn't know that. And so, each sound check, starting at Red Rocks and outside Denver, going across the country, ending up at New York's Avery Fisher Hall, now Geffen Hall. These sound checks sound checks are usually just line tests. People are just going through the motions, just make sure that the sound technicians have all what they need and they're tuning to the room. And these sound checks were increasingly really interesting, and they were like, jamming together, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. I'm sitting on a road case exhausted because I'm the first one off the bus and the last one on at night. But I noticed that. Lo and behold, what we experienced in those sound checks over the course of the tour was the coming together of a band, and that band is Toto. And it happened. Yeah, it happened right before our eyes and ears. And they had talked about it, but they'd actually gelled as a band and took off from there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have, and this is, I think, a sign that I'm getting old, is one of the things I've kind of gotten into in music. And when you talked about Bob Skaggs continuing to do stuff, and you mentioned John Mellencamp, one of the things that I found is really cool is when you see a lot of these musicians from the 80s and the 90s now are coming back around and doing things like, Huey Lewis went and has done a series of albums where he's going back and doing classics from, I don't think it's Chess Records, but I forget which one of the old record labels it is, and doing that kind of stuff. And it's kind of fun to see these bands that are coming back around. Is there anybody like that you look at that you used to have a relationship and now you see stuff coming out from them that you find interesting?
Well, one of the most consistent musicians who really never took a dip has been Van Morrison. I mean, he just consistently puts out interesting music, good music. He's got great band members that have stuck with him. But one of the, artists typically sort of level off to fall off in their talent. But there are a number of musicians I have great reverence for. I've presented them all, like Mel Torme, Rosemary Clooney, Tony Bennett, whose voices got better after they were 70. I mean, and Barbara Cook, who was a Broadway artist. It just, like, the phrasing was so nuanced, and just, and Tony always ends his shows with the mic's off and the sound off, and just sings to the Palace or the Ohio where I presented him without any amplification. So it's interesting to see artists like that even get better, but it's as much managing a career as it is talent, and all the marketing that goes into all that, and having good, trustworthy management to manage careers. Another quick story, there were a number of times when I couldn't get shows off at the scheduled time. I have any number of stories about that, but one was, you might recall that Lyle Lovett was married to Julia Roberts, and wouldn't you know that our Lyle Lovett date on that particular tour at the Ohio Theater was the date that Julia Roberts happened to fly in and sort of, see Lyle, which is great, right? That's sort of cool, except that they were in the bus, she arrived and they were in the bus, and it became showtime. And none of his crew would dare knock on the bus.
I would not do that if I wanted to keep working there.
Meanwhile, the crowd is getting impatient.
And you didn't have Cab Calloway to come out like the Blues Brothers and kind of entertain him with Minnie the Moocher, right?
No.
That wasn't an option. So.
No, it wasn't. Cab had gone by then.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I knocked on the bus.
Wow.
It's showtime. So anyways, that worked out, fortunately. But my very first...
If you would have gone out into the crowd and said, hey, here's the deal. He's chilling with Julia Roberts right now, so he's going to be late. I think they might have actually understood.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, they might not have been pleased, but at least they would have known that,
yeah.
maybe they're going to get to see a show.
Or they would have all left and surrounded the tour bus to see Julia.
Right, well, that's true. Or the wrong tour bus and seen like you and somebody else or something.
Hey, you're right.
When you see a band or an artist, do you have a sense after all of your different experiences, like this one's going to last, this is going to be a one-hit wonder or a flame out, or can you tell they got it or they don't, or is it really just a crapshoot, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, I guess the way I oriented booking talent, and I would want to have them through their whole cycle. So I'd like to discover them. So there were 4 sold out nights that I presented Kenny G one New Year's Eve period of time. And I called his manager, a guy named Dennis Turner, and said, Dennis, I want to put this solo artist, or I want to put this artist on as an opening act. And he said, no, Kridler, we're going to do a comic. I don't want to mess with the stage. And I said, no, I want to use this slot. I'm paying Kenny, and we sold it out, and I want to do this. And again, this is a very pugilistic realm of booking concerts and dealing with agents and managers. And so he got, argumentative, and I wouldn't back down. And he said, well, what instrument do they play? I said, it's just one instrument. It's a piano. And he said, no, we're not going to have a piano go on to Kenny's set. Then you got to really reset everything.
I just love the vision of you fighting with Kenny G's managers.
Oh, yeah. And he was manager to others, too. And this is at the height of Kenny. Kenny, by the way, is an accountant and a really nice guy. I mean, truly, some people might not like his music, but he's really a very nice guy. Anyways, I said it's an upright piano, and he says, an upright piano? Kridler, you're nuts. No, we're not going to have a piano on. Nobody plays the upright piano. Nobody cares about the opening act. Put a comic on for 20 minutes. And I said, no, I'm going to do this. So I booked it, and the reason I did it is because I believe, this is to your point about spotting. So it wasn't about whether I felt they could make it. It was whether I could discern a sense that they should make it. So I wouldn't predict that they would, but I believe that they were investment grade and should be heard. And so in this case, I prevailed. We had this guy play the upright piano. And the idea is if it did take off, then there was the advantage of being able to then work with them through the enlarging of their audiences. And so people arrived. I didn't know who the opening act was. I don't even remember whether I think I did put the person's name in the ad. But they arrive a little bit late. They're not, really caring about the opening act part of it and talking and whatever. And ladies and gentlemen, the person walks onto an upright piano. It's like, okay.
I don't even know what upright piano is.
So the typical baby grand or grand piano is sort of flat, like parallel to the stage.
Yeah.
And upright is like you might have seen in old time movies and saloons, where the piano it goes.
Think. I'll put it in terms for you. What Goose was playing Great Balls of Fire on.
Oh, okay. So it's like, okay, now I know. Thank
Okay.
you.
I would have flunked that test, but
Saloon is also a good reference.
Yeah.
where riverboat gambling happens,
it's
just to
all
bring it full
together.
circle. Anyways, so this person walks on, and it's like one by one, you could tell like all the conversations was stopping, and there was like total attention to this guy, and it was the debut of Harry Connick Jr.
I was waiting for the name.
I was
like,
waiting for
it's
yeah.
50-50. I'm going to know who it is, or it's going to fall flat, and I have no idea. That's a big name.
Yeah, and so people came away, what would that have been, 10,000 people or more, came away from that just being like hugely impressed with the talent that deserved to be seen. And that's what he started out playing what's called stride piano in New Orleans, where his dad was a DA, and then evolved to vocals. He wasn't singing then even, and evolved more like a kind of a Frank Sinatra model kind of thing. But those are the fun things. So, but no, I will say some of the biggest sweethearts that I ever met in the business were Julie Andrews, Yo-Yo Ma. There's just not a better human than Yo-Yo Ma. I mean, extraordinary musician, but always accessible. So folks like that. But then, but regardless of genre, it could be classical music. I mean, I could tell you some amazing stories about some classical musicians, temperamental classical musicians, but some beautiful ones too. So it doesn't mean it all happens in rock and roll. And again, you have to make room for them, because there's a lot of nerves associated with laying yourself fully on the line and being judged, by the ticket buyers who come expecting, to be impressed.
So that's one last stupid question. I'm sorry. This is
That's
really
okay.
important. You mentioned groupies looking for Rolling Stones. You mentioned Kenny G. Does Kenny G have groupies?
I'm sure he did back then.
But it
I mean,
wasn't like you were fighting them off.
No.
You didn't have Kenny G hair so that you could pass
No
as
one
Kenny
thought
G.
you were
No.
Kenny G in the limo.
No. He never got a perm. This is the first I've admitted never getting a perm on podcasts.
No, they're first for us. So you described the concert business as being pugilistic. High
risk.
That means boxing.
No, I thank you.
High risk, tense, a lot of egos, and always trying to exact another pound of flesh from the other side of the table is how it's done in that business.
So how do you go from that to running a large community foundation that is about building partnership? And then also, I think one of the things that I think you've done really well is making your organization always be part of the conversation. And then frankly, one of your signature things is having your organization be what starts the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Because it's all about stewardship. It was a completely seamless transition, because in both cases, though the selection of artists, the discerning about talent and deciding who to bring to town and expanding our footprint at theaters in Chicago, New Haven, and all that, and all of that, and selecting artists, presenting artists, hosting the resident groups and trying to support them in the theaters, it was always about creating a dynamic, better community. So all the artists and so forth were a means to an end of stewardship, of civic progress, growth in terms of experience and quality of life. And so the foundation is the same thing. It's stewardship with a different platform, but the ultimate or delivery mechanism and value creation. But the ultimate overall reason to care is the same, and that's why when tempted with offers from Carnegie Hall to Kennedy Center and so forth, I said, I did realize somehow I did not know a soul when I came to Columbus, Ohio. Was recruited here. I was about to enter Ohio State Law School, but got last second. In fact, two UA residents, the Venettas, said to me, a couple of pre-COVID at an event, they said, hey, we didn't know you were in our law class. And I said, I wasn't. And they said, no, you were. And I said, no, I didn't go to law school. And they said, no, we were at a reunion the other night and saw the picture of the incoming class, and you were in it. And so that's how close it got to, but I got convinced to come and take over and lead Kappa as they were about to file for bankruptcy because of the cost overruns of expanding the Ohio Theater. I did so because I had a sense. Nobody told me, I didn't read it. I had a sense that Columbus's time was now, even back then. That was 38 years ago. And later, Don Fanta, who ran the Ohio company, once said to me that he thinks that the reason that Columbus has its best days ahead is because we were not founded on a navigable waterway. And that meant that our growth, our glory days weren't tied to old industry, but our possibilities were now. And so to answer your question with that in mind, the fact that we were we have the ability in this cycle of life to co-create a great community, whether it be the community I live in UA or broadly the region, is an awesome opportunity. And the through line from the office of Kappa to the office of the foundation is exactly the same, because that's the mindset, is what can I do to help our community progress and grow, get better, enhance quality of life and opportunity and experiences, and how to serve the community in that way. So there was zero transition from that standpoint.
So what, for our listeners, we've talked about two of them. My wife knows what the foundation is. I don't know that Darren's dad knows.
Dad might not.
Your dad might not know what the foundation is.
Yeah.
What is the foundation today?
Yeah. So we help donors help others through the most effective philanthropy possible as a simple proposition to those who create funds at the foundation and so forth. It's all private. There's nothing public. But overall, the mission is to help strengthen and improve the community for the benefit of all of its residents. And so with that in mind, what the undertaking is, it is a 501c3 who creates funding vehicles for families, individuals, and companies to be effective philanthropists. And there is a huge array of community knowledge that we have, of philanthropic knowledge that we have, in working with a whole array of advisors that people have, legal and professional, pretty good problem solvers on challenges of legacy or challenges of transfer of wealth or what have you. And we create a better community through the enlargement of charitable giving. And by building a trusted institution born in the middle of World War II, think about that. You got war in the Pacific, you got war in the Atlantic, you got factories being turned over to the war effort instead of their usual production of goods. You have worry about young men going off to war and whether they'll return, worry of the survival of civilization as we know it. And hey, in the middle of that, let's think about taking care of others and start a community foundation. So from its roots, it cares about others, and it is there to serve others and affect progress of the community through the expansion of charitable giving. And the way you do that is create that trusted institution. And, you know, our legal counsel is right here from internal legal counsel, general counsel is right here from UA, and I think you know him, Brad Britton,
Yep.
who's outstanding. So from, you know, there's a lot of UA influence in our leadership, but from the legal to the financial to the investment, the idea is when you've worked hard for your money and you may know how to save or you know, if you've done well, maybe build a company or what have you. I mean, Warren Buffett said it best. He knows how to do that really well. But what he'd like to do is make sure that he's just as effective giving it away and having it, his success benefit others as well. And so that's really the service that we provide.
So one of the things that I've appreciated about working with you and your team is the extent to which you all don't just focus on working with your existing donor base and your existing philanthropists, but you really do try and bring everybody into conversations. And one of the things that I love about Columbus as a whole, and I think the same is true in Upper Arlington, is that in some ways, because of what you talked about us not being a traditional industries city, we'll take in anybody with a good idea. Mm-hmm. Anybody with a good idea who's willing to work to make it happen gets integrated into this community, I think, really well. Talk a little bit about the things that you've done to do that and the things that you all have done to engage more people in the community and really kind of expand what it means to give to this community.
Mm-hmm. So there's a sort of a service element to what we do for our donors. We're very dedicated to that. That's our orientation. That is our value creation. But we also understand that if we know the community, care about the community to the extent that we do, we know about philanthropy and we know, a bit about technology, that we can also and should also exhibit a heightened public value where we leverage all that we know into something that's publicly accessible to, again, large philanthropy and charitable giving to support others. Add to that the fact that I believe that a knowledge-based, a community knowledge-based, and community caring-based organization like ours should make a contribution to building a community spirit. Because what we know about the community is that it's a great place to live, work, and play, and it is a place that, again, is becoming something greater seemingly every day. And if we all join together, or as many of folks that we can join together to build a better tomorrow, then we should create opportunities for participation across the community. So the first one we did was we created the first online day of giving in America. It was a really extraordinary success. Fast forward to the last one we did, which was during 2020, June of 2020, and raised in one day $30 million for charities across the community from every state in the country and 12 different countries around the world, and obviously the preponderance of folks here locally. And it's a very costly undertaking, and there's not a hidden penny or dime or anything that comes to the foundation. But what we do is it's a rally, for giving to support others in our community and to strengthen the social fabric of the community. So it's a, if you will, an elective exercise. There's nothing, business-wise or anything like that hinges on that happening. but it is meant to be a way to incentivize and inspire people to come together to help organizations in need. And there was a lot of need then, with a lot of nonprofits under duress, serving folks with high degree of vulnerability. The other one is the Big Table, which is all about human connection, and just happened a few weeks ago. And I know that there are a number of conversations here in the community. And there it's really kind of in the hands of those who participate. It's not something that we dictate what the outcome should be. We just use our marketing know-how to try to inspire a day of conversations. And there were just a huge array of places and people participating this year. It's always such an inspiring time. And so those are examples. We also have the Center for Human Kindness, which is it just simply exists to try to encourage and inspire kindness to each other. You're wearing the viewers who are not, or the listeners who are not lucky enough to see what I see. I see our hosts are wearing Fred Rogers-like red sweaters. And certainly Fred Rogers cared a lot about kindness, and in that spirit, inspired by somebody who lived in UA, doesn't currently, but another UA legacy who sort of funded the early days of our kindness program. We have kept that going, and the Gifts of Kindness helps a family avoid homelessness, actually more than one family a day now. So these are all ways that have nothing to do with like business or revenue to us or anything, but it's just kind of like quiet leveraging of what we care about and our skills of our people to create a stronger region.
And, one of the things I do appreciate about the work you guys do is you work with other foundations. So you mentioned Brad Britton earlier, and Brad is an advisor to the UA Community Foundation. I know he's been a huge help to Jessica Grisey. And you mentioned the Gifts of Kindness program. I think that was part of the inspiration for us putting together the Good Neighbor Fund in UA. And we've got that same kind of thing because there are people in need everywhere. And having the big foundation there to be the guide to help all the kind of foundations that are doing more local work, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, from Dublin to UA to Bexley to New Albany, we are in service to many other community philanthropic efforts, and that kind of local touchstone is important. And fortunately, in each of those cases, they're really very well run. And in UA, there's already a great body of work to build on, and a lot of things that they care deeply about. And certainly, the community center is off to a good start, it seems, in funding.
Good start, but we're not finished. So all our listeners who haven't contributed to that campaign, please feel free to do so and visit the community center website. What do you see as kind of the next big thing around? What's the next big opportunity? What's the next big challenge? However do you want to phase it for the Columbus region as a whole?
How to be ready. And what I mean by that is the amount of growth that we're going to see in this community. I mean, truly, I think that the glory days of Columbus, in terms of things that the world recognizes are happening here, and then, hopefully with institutions like ours and others in the community, and folks like our good governments like UA's, that they'll be able to be enjoyed by many, if not all. But the amount of growth, economic growth in this region is going to be extraordinary. That does create challenges associated with everything from affordable housing to transit access to so on and so on. And we're very mindful of that, very mindful of that. Of all organizations being mindful of the array of that, I think the Columbus Foundation, with its community research, is mindful of that. However, there's a man named Trabian Shorters who likes to talk about complex equity issues and so forth around asset framing, and you can kind of get just by its name what it's designed to do. And that is our hope, which is that we see the opportunity associated with this, and we keep in a positive mindset about growth, where we can see the benefits of it, but do what's important to do to realize the benefits of it. And so that's why I encapsulate that into ready. How can we as a community be ready? And we've studied the other communities, and the thing about Austin is they got behind. Steve, of all people, and I want to give a shout out to Steve Shoney here for a moment, because I have worked with him in earlier iterations, all kidding about funny riverboat gambling anecdotes aside. You have one of the most skilled development professionals anywhere in Steve Shoney, so the UA is very fortunate. But there is a hope that we can realize Austin new growth was coming, and it came faster than they thought, and so they sort of missed the opportunity. So regional planning, the whole planning around corridors and understanding the imperative of some degree of density, which is obviously a difficult conversation in many communities. Is our responsibility to make sure that we balance quality of life with opportunity for the next generations, in terms of jobs, in terms of having our kids. I remember going to a Chamber of Commerce annual meeting in probably 85, 86, and Mel Schottenstein, so for those who don't know, it's the M in the MI Homes, did an address, and he said that we need to build a community where our kids and grandkids want to live and stay. Mm-hmm. Now, fortunately, in UA, there are a lot of examples where people have decided multi-generationally to stay or to live in future generations. But just think regionally about that, and how can we ensure in all sorts of respects our ability to continue to do that. And that's a win from economic development, is, instead of having to visit your kids or grandkids, plane rides away, that this is a compelling city of opportunity, region of opportunity, that they can make a good life and a good career right here. And that doesn't happen by sliding backwards. That doesn't happen by not pursuing or not nurturing the optimism of taking risks and investing in things by letting time pass your community by. And all you have to do, and I'm not going to cite names of communities, but there are a lot of communities we know well in this region where they do know that the glory days are behind them, and that's why they're losing population. And that's why we're gaining, is there's a sense of optimism and that the best days can be ahead. So we want to help have our community, have our region in any way we can to be ready.
It's interesting. So I came into this job a little over 3 years ago now, and one of my worries was how much change this community, Upper Arlington, would be able to handle. And I've stopped using the term change because I think what this community wants and expects and desires is evolution. And I think as a kind of community as a whole, I think Central Ohio is like, yeah, we're ready to evolve into the next version of us. And it's interesting, we did a community survey that we got back a month and a half ago. We do it every 3 to 5 years. And fourth question out of the box, without it's an open-ended question, is what's your greatest concern about our community? And the number one answer was the lack of diversity. Mm-hmm. In 2017, when they asked that question, 3% of people gave that as their answer. Summer 2002, it's 26%. And I think that is a recognition in our community that, yeah, we need to evolve. We recognize how the world is changing, and you see it across a lot of things. We've got a lot of multifamily going up that community has talked a lot about. We know it's a lot of change. Not everybody's happy about it, but I think when you talk to the bulk of people, they look at the world around them and say, this is what our community needs to incorporate, not change to, but we need to figure out how to take the best of what's new and work it into what's been great. And I think that's one of the things that I love about working in this community is you've got people who can see that kind of vision. So we wrap up every interview with 2 questions. That are kind of 2 sides of the same coin. What do you love about UA, and what would you change?
I can imagine any answer I'd come up with has already been said, so I hate to be.
You could say nothing, but that'd be kind of sad.
Yeah. And as you could tell, so far I have a hard time coming up with any words on any topic. But so I guess the one I would emphasize for me, because my work has consistently always been outside of UA. The concerts or sporting events that I go to are outside of UA. Is how do you beat the quality of life, not only of what's in UA, which I'm sure all your other guests have found ways to celebrate, and so I could say the same things. But I guess my little feature or emphasis would be the proximity, because through the proximity becomes further engagement. If it was not proximate, there might be more excuses not to stay engaged, not to participate in events downtown, whether festivals or cultural events or even the restaurants or what have you. And it is, downtown is the mayor you worked for often would say, is everybody's neighborhood. And I think we do have a vested interest in downtown. So the one I would emphasize, whether it be a 10-minute bike ride to an Ohio State football game to, a 30-minute bike ride to my office, I just think that that's a huge feature that so many other people who live in so-called great communities, lament, or at least when they hear about it, they think you're not being, truthful.
Right.
How quickly you could get to everything, how quickly you could get home, and how many minutes you therefore haven't spent in a car waiting around getting somewhere.
Yeah, that is that was a big thing for my wife and I when we moved here. We've lived here long before I had this job, and it was, do I really want to spend an hour of my life listening to drive time radio?
Yeah.
Or
a podcast. Doug, thanks for being on. It's fantastic to catch up with you.
You're welcome.
Darren, do you have any final words of wisdom?
No, I appreciate you bearing with my stupid questions. I'm fascinated by the music industry because I'm as far away from that as possible, being musically tone deaf.
So who do you listen, when you drive home tonight, who would be on your radio? Who would just likely be on your radio?
I don't know if I should admit this, but I would probably have Snoop Dogg on my radio.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I don't. Have you ever any of those kind of artists?
No.
That kind of music?
No, although when I did Aretha Franklin, she had her son as a surprise opening act. And that was not advertised or anything, so he walked on and did his very unusual set, and it's very contemporary and not to the like of folks who had bought Aretha Franklin tickets.
So you had an impromptu, okay.
Yeah. So Aretha was one of the. I could. We're out of time, so I won't. But there are some great stories about paying artists. Some artists don't trust managers to take the settlements, or trust checks. and so they want cash. And I mean, they're getting paid,
Yeah.
a lot of money backstage, and some of the artists themselves, want to count out the money. So whether it be Dizzy Gillespie to Willie Nelson in his bus, and yes, all the rumors are true.
Yeah.
And
The green smoke following Willie's bus. Yeah.
Yes, and to Aretha Franklin, just some fascinating, Bob Dylan. There's some fascinating stuff that happens, backstage when you're actually settling after the art has happened.
Well, and Aretha and her generation of black art, I mean, they had all been stolen from. And they
Exactly. Once again, it's back to the promoters. Not every promoter, but a lot of promoters would try to take advantage, and so they learned. Yep.
Well, I appreciate it. I've learned a lot today.
I had too. It's always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you very much for the invite, and to the listeners, I appreciate your patience.
How